My wife did not have an easy pregnancy. Nothing life-threatening until the very end, but if it could suck while not killing you, she probably had it. A high watermark came in the first trimester when she had so much morning sickness she had to be rehydrated intravenously, twice. Her hip rotated entirely out of place way before it needed to accommodate a baby, and then it stubbornly refused to rotate back in. And at the end, her blood pressure spiked so high that she had to go on a week of bed rest. And after a week of laying on her left side, we still induced to avoid permanent damage. But through all this, our constant companions were the hormones. Now, I think everybody who's been pregnant or taken care of a pregnant woman has hormone stories, crying at coffee commercials, screaming because she remembered her shoes as a different shade of brown, melancholy while assembling the crib. That's totally typical stuff. That's just hormones. Andrea, however, had hormones that left their parents behind on Krypton. Hormones that crawled out of the sea to breathe nuclear fire on the terrified populace of Tokyo. Her hormones wanted to have your liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. And as delivery day approached, we spent a very pleasant afternoon looking at daycares, which led into an evening of nice, normal conversation. So nice and normal that to this day, I can't tell you what we talked about. We chatted as we went to bed. We parted ways at the bathroom so I could brush my teeth. I had barely started when Andrea returned, sobbing. Now stop for a minute. I know you've heard that word before, but how many of you have actually seen a woman sob in real life? I hadn't. I'd only seen it in movies, and this was not Hollywood. This was ugly and pained and real, and she looked like she had been at it for hours. Remember, she'd been out of my sight for about 5 seconds. What's wrong? I asked, rushing to comfort her. We can't leave him, she wailed. We can't leave who where? I asked. Elijah, we can't leave him with strangers. He'll just be a tiny baby boy. He'll be so helpless. We can't leave him. She cried like Meatloaf in Fight Club, people. Sweetie, I don't know what you think we should do, I said, softly patting the back of a fully educated and licensed state's attorney. You make 10 times more money than I do, and we owe more on your brain than we do on the house. She looked up at me, puffy cheeks making red-rimmed slits of eyes that burned bright with hope, love, and happiness. Would you stay home with him? Pro tip, husbands, there is only one way to answer that question. And that's how I became a stay-at-home dad. And in a lot of ways, that set the tone for Andrea's life as a mother. Deep mothering instincts without a clue of what to do with them. You see, Andrea didn't have much of an example when it came to mothering. I would describe my mother-in-law's parenting style as glacial. Cold, remote, and likely to grind you to dust as it moves on. Andrea couldn't even rely on an unrealistic ideal of a sitcom mom because she didn't have cable growing up. That's not one of her mom's many sins, by the way. It's just frustrating for a guy who's steeped in pop culture when his wife doesn't get his facts of life jokes. To Andrea, motherhood looked like neglect and abandonment. She didn't really have a mom so much as a disdainful roommate. And this culminated in her late teens when she discovered a potentially life-threatening health problem, a health problem she faced alone. Now, for those of you in the audience who know me, all of this will obviously bring me to Chinese philosophy. Specifically the Tao, if you've heard of it. To Chinese thinkers, the Tao is the way, and the way is all-encompassing. It's good and evil, light and dark, male and female, up and down, Fox News and CNN, regular and unleaded, dogs and cats. You get the idea. Andrea invented her own Tao of Motherhood. The motherhood legacy Andrea received is one of emotional instability as she struggled against formative years mostly devoid of tenderness. It's a birthright of crippling anxiety from growing up in a world where nobody took care of you but you. And it's a heritage of abandonment terror as she worries that everyone will eventually leave her. And it's an inheritance of mind-numbing self-doubt as she fights to not become her mother to our son. And yet, she is amazing. She's committed and loving and devoted. She is unflinchingly supportive, even when that means letting Elijah go off on his own. My boy knows exactly how much he is loved and nothing about how much it freaks Andrea out to love somebody else that much. Now, do I wish all this good could come from a place that wasn't full of fear and deprivation? Of course. I mean, mothering's hard for any woman, but it's especially difficult for a woman to whom a crowded room is a source of nervousness and for whom a husband's love creates the fear that he'll leave someday. But do I wish for a better mom for my son? I can't. It's impossible. He's already got the best one ever. I agree. I can't find her, or I would probably embarrass her right now. So it really doesn't matter how or why you become a good mother. If it's because you stand on the shoulders of motherhood giants, be grateful for your good fortune. If it's because you're rebelling against a mother who did her best to ruin you as a person, then be grateful for the bad example so you can do the opposite. Mothers are large enough to encompass all this and more. After all, they were large enough to hold a life. And that's the Tao of Motherhood, and I have only my wife to thank for showing it to me.